Welcome to the Reno Ring, real talk, real trade, real profit. This is a place where we pull back the drywall and look at the framing of real live businesses. All right, today we're here with John Kerr from Breelan Construction Limited in the tiny, tiny city of Sterling, which you've probably never heard of, but he services the Belleville area and the Bay of Quinte. The main services that he provides are interior renovations, kitchen, bathroom, and basement. And we know everyone sees the finished kitchen on Instagram, but nobody talks about the absolute chaos of managing crews and the stress of the yo-yo months where you're wondering where your next lead is going to come from. John has been a home remodeler for 7 years, just had his anniversary, and actually figured out a way to price properly and profitably, trying to figure out all those business aspects early on. So I am your host, Karen, the girl on fire. I run a suite of business growth companies, bridging the gap between old school sales strategies and new school AI automation. I started my first company when I was 12. I've won over a dozen different awards and shared stages with Tony Robbins, Les Brown, and Jack Canfield. And right now, I'm focused on helping founders 2x their revenue for 100 business owners using my family feud style strategy. So let's dive in, John. What inspired you to start your business?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Karen. Yeah, I've always wanted to start a business. I knew that from a young age, and I don't know how deep I want to go into, but I started on a different career path in school. I went actually for health sciences in school, and was going to be in a different career path. And then I ended up leaving that because I realized that I really like to build things. I did a lot of stuff growing up. So I left that schooling and went and started framing for a builder in our area. And over the years, I've kind of worked myself up from a laborer into a sort of a lead hand, and then a site manager for a company. I'm working for many different companies over that time. And again, throughout all of that, I always pictured myself having my own company. And I just didn't know when, but at some point, well, maybe almost 8 years ago now, actually 7.5 years ago, I was actually laid off from a job. The company had a downturn and I was laid off. And in that time, I started picking up some small projects. And before I knew it, I was busy. And I said, well, now's the time to just go for it. And just kind of started in March of 2019, officially started the business. And then it's been going ever since. So again, it was kind of one of those dreams to have and then almost kind of forced or happened by chance into it.
I feel like we're the same way. I think you answered like the first three questions here for me in that one thing in one fell swoop. But I actually owned a health clinic for 25 years and my own business locally. I also sold home improvements on the side. But yeah, it's really interesting how the paths changed. Obviously, COVID shut down my health clinic. We had been growing year over year to X for 4 years in a row, and then boom, the doors were closed. I was talking on stages, and boom, I wasn't talking on stages anymore. Everything was shut
Yeah.
down, right? So it's like, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? All right. Well, I was teaching marketing as well. So it's really funny how things cross and change. So
Yeah.
thanks
The
for
path's
sharing that.
never
That's
just
so
linear.
cool. Health sciences, who would have thought? We both came from the health, like
Mhm.
25 years of helping people with their health. And I sold home improvements on the side and did other things, which is a whole nother story. But so how did you come up with your business name or brand?
Oh, very good. So yeah, I actually struggled to come up with a business name. It was one of the reasons we actually lingered registering the business. Part of it being like the typical, or I thought would have been Care Construction because that's my last name. But in our area, there happens to be a lot of other Kerr companies. Some of them are related to, some I'm not. And so I didn't want to kind of just get confused for some of the other ones. And there's actually a Kerr Construction just like the next town over, sort of. So again, I was thinking for something different. The long story short is the Breelan is actually a combination of my kids' names. My daughter's name is Aubrey, and my son's name is Lachlan. So it's kind of the last part of both of their names. So we kind of my stepmom kind of actually came up with that, and we all fell in love with it. It worked out great. And yeah, we've kind of just it's like I kind of forget that over the years that that's what it is, but that is where it started. And it's a catchy name. It's also we looked it up, and there's no other Breelan doesn't exist anywhere else. So in terms of online and stuff, people looking for it, and nothing else pops up as like a competitor or a similar name, which worked out great in our benefit.
That's awesome. I actually
Mhm.
was on stages with, like, Bob Proctor and, like, these giants, Joe Vitale, and they were like, "You have to change your name. It's not Googleable. It's not searchable. No one can spell your first name. No one can spell your last name." And that's how I got rid of Karen Gishi Duncan, brutal, and became Karen the Girl on Fire. I was like, "When these giants tell you what to do, you just say, 'Okay.'" And then I
Yeah.
told my parents I was changing my last name, and they were like, "What? We don't like that." I was like, "Okay, well, it's like a stage name, just think of it like that. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal." But I love your story. I love that it's a combination of your kids' names. I don't think I could have done that, but I love the way
Mm.
your stepmom came up with it. That's awesome. Okay, so who were your biggest influences early on? Like you said, you transitioned out of a completely different life. Who were your mentors? Who is the family? Who is the local role models? Like, who did you learn from? Because there's a big learning curve, especially on the business side, like you said.
Yeah. Being early early influences was like the reason we started building was probably my father. My father, oddly enough, he's a chiropractor, and actually the reason I started going to health science. But as a kid, he always built tons of stuff. So on the weekend, we were always building stuff. We had a cottage, and we would always be fixing and building sheds or docks, and that's how I kind of got started from very young, just building stuff all the time. That's kind of where I really fell in love with creating and building things. And so even though I said my father was an inspiration to go into health sciences, it was also in the end kind of what led me back to construction. And but over the years, once I got into it, I guess I've had many, maybe not a specific mentor, but different bosses over the years that kind of helped me along the way, working for different companies that, gave me that expertise. I've done it, lost so many roles over the years from just not just the labor, carrying the tools and, packing dirt or that sort of thing. And just throughout the years within some companies growing, but other companies just kind of jumping from one company to another um, to get like a larger role. And yeah, I guess within those, I've had some good and bad bosses, and I learned lots from both of or both types of them. Learn some of the good stuff from the good guys, and some of the bad stuff you learn I don't want to replicate that in my own business. So, and I even had a boss not that long ago, and uh, had some difficulties with him, but he was actually I respect his business aspect, and so I learned a lot of stuff again from him on the documentation and trying to yeah, like document and make a better business. But then over the more recent years in my business, I've done business coaching as well, construction related business coaching, and that's been very helpful to keep me on track. Um, Helping to build the business part of it, because going into construction, or I've learned so much of the construction part of it. Starting my business, there's so much of the business part that I wasn't familiar with. So there was, learning about, even like payroll or employee management or into sales, and lead generation and all that stuff there's so much involved with it, as sure you know. And so learning that, I've kind of learned a lot as we go, but business coaching that we have has helped me guide me through that and give me real systems and stuff as well to grow and build those processes out. So we actually have like a back end that we can rely on and not just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, which has been good. I'm still every day focusing more on that. Even now, I'm not really in the tools much more. So as I'm kind of transitioned into a more of an office role, I'm getting better at building those systems out.
Okay, awesome. So I had a couple things to say about that. So one
Mhm.
is I always talk to my kids, my clients, my patients, my customers, everyone, my students, that you got to choose your mentors wisely. And there's two kind of mentors out there. People say like those that don't do teach and those that teach don't know how or something like that. And I was like, I disagree. Like, so I'd say to my kids, you were trying to lose weight. Would you listen to a fat doctor? No offense. Not like, no offense, but
Yeah.
would you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But if the fat doctor taught 200 people how to lose weight, would you listen to him? And they're like,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
choosing mentors is a really interesting conversation. But in any case, something else you said caught my attention. I want to make sure I check in with that. So, did you say you hired business coaches or you are a business coach or both?
Oh, yeah. I'm not a business coach, but I have a business coach program,
Ah,
construction related one, and they've
got
helped
it.
me
Got it.
significantly
That
over the
Got it. All right, awesome. Well, that's super. I love that you did that, and definitely we love people who have done the thing that we're trying to do, which is great. So, speaking of that, how did you get your very first customer? Because I know all the guys watching want to know. How did you get your
Mhm.
first one? And then how are things different now?
Yeah, very good. So the very first customer of my business, again, I was kind of when I was first laid off, still looking for a job, trying to find some work. Very first customer was actually through a contact I had through my my the company I worked through before. I was kind of chatting with her about being off, and she had a recommendation from her neighbor that was looking for somebody. So I went and met with them, and it was a small kitchen renovation, and I was able to help them do the small kitchen renovation. And while I was so that was my very first customer, and that was just a quick thing while I was still not sure what I was going to do. But right after that, or in that process of helping that client, still looking for a job, one of my best friends and his girlfriend at the time purchased a really old home that needed a full renovation from top to bottom. And they approached me saying, "Would you be interested in doing this for us?" And that's where I was like, "Okay." We worked at the details. Me not really sure where it was at that point. Um, but long story short, we ended up taking it on. It took me about 6 months to do most of it by myself. And did we did the house from gutted it right down to the studs, interior and exterior, and redid the whole thing. And again, took about 6 months or so. And but it really gave me my start. Um, Learned a lot just in that process. I knew how to do most of the hands-on stuff, but learned a lot in the process. And throughout that, and that's where I was kind of in the middle of that. Started all of a sudden like, all right, well, here's another little job. Here's another little job, and it was kind of like, oh, now I've got work lined up for many more months. I should just really make a go of it. So both those first jobs are just kind of friends, word of mouth. And on your question, where we getting our leads and projects is first bunch of years had just been for word of mouth for the first many years of, family, friends. And then we would do work for a client. We get a lot of great recommendations and feedback, and we grew kind of organically that way. But more recent, as we're trying to grow and get bigger, going beyond our friends and family. We've done a lot. We try to use social media organically for leads, and it's been working pretty good. Facebook as well, like in some of the Facebook groups locally, we get a lot of recommendations there. But then in the last year, I think around the last year, we started doing some like social media ads, like meta ads as well. That have really sort of jump kicked our leads recently. It really allowed us to take on more work, especially we've kind of been the last year or so has been maybe the last 24 months has been up and down in different areas of well, quantity of work. So it allowed us to really bring leads in and become a little bit more selective on the jobs we want to do, which has been nice and we've been able to start to pick and choose a bit of what we want to do and narrow it down a little bit as well. So again, we kind of as we're starting to grow, we're just doing those few things, and um, we sponsor some local teams, like sports teams and events occasionally that help us get out in the public, but not really. I don't think there's maybe no direct correlation to leads, but again, just trying to be out in the public and supporting our community as well.
Well, you just answered like 6 of my questions as well, all in one. I love that. All right, I gotta go back just a little bit
Yeah,
here.
we could dive deeper into any of those specific ones if you'd
You
like
just
to. Yeah.
Yeah, you just kept going. It was so great. I love how prepped you are. So first of all, holy bejeebas, you took on a full house reno as like one of your first projects. That is what I mean, we talked about your successes and you said, you know, pricing things appropriately, which is a huge problem for guys when they first
Mhm.
start, a huge, massive problem. However, I think having the guts, even though you built decks and stuff with your family when you were younger, I don't know anybody that I've talked to in construction that would take on a whole home reno that early on into your journey. So I'm gonna say kudos to that. That is insanely large project and that's so complex. Like you gotta know licensing, you gotta know the rules for electricity, plumbing, like all the you gotta
Mhm.
know a lot of stuff to take on a full house, right? Like that's like flipping world. That's like what you do when you're super experienced and you did it as one of your first projects. So I got to acknowledge that. That's first.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was
So
I
congrats.
had the experience
Yeah.
I had the experience throughout like the year. Like I had been working on that same stuff for a year, just with for a different company, right? So, um, but it was so I
Okay.
had the
That
experience of
makes more
working
sense.
for like another company. Yeah, like having the experience of
Right.
doing all of those things. So I it wasn't my first house we renovated. It was just first house by myself renovated. For previous
That makes
companies,
so
that's
much.
what we did a lot of. I did a lot of new home construction, but yeah,
Uh,
by myself, certainly by myself was the first thing that I took on, and but also navigating the all the extra stuff and not just doing the work too.
And the project management, that's a skill
Hmm.
all on its own. Like being a project manager and knowing the timing about like kitchen especially, right? It's a nightmare. That this has like cabinets have to go in, countertops have to go after. Like there's an order to all these things, right? So project management is huge. It's very different than just doing the work. It's a whole nother set of skills. So
It
you
is.
answered how you're getting customers now because a lot of the guys ask that. You answered what the early days look like and if you had help. So the first podcast we did, this is a really odd question that we threw into the mix here because the first guy we had said something really interesting that we've never heard out of any podcast that we've seen or heard, and we always like to have unique edge here. So he was talking about this kind of secret weird thing in the big box stores, and I'm not gonna say any names, Home Depot, Lowe's. But basically, apparently, they have different products that have the same name, for example, Moen faucets at the big box stores as the actual supplier, but they're different products when they go to the big box store so that they can keep their costs down. I was very surprised to hear that. And so now we have a new question about the premium suppliers that you use that make you better than the people who are using all the big box stores as their main supplier. So what's your secret? Who's your premium suppliers? Who are you like, I would never buy that from the big box store. I would always go direct to X supplier or Y supplier.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's something also I've kind of like that fact is something I've learned also more recently. So like, for years we use the big box stores. We still do for many things as well, but for some of our like things like cabinetry or like plumbing fixtures as well, we have like a local more like wholesalers direct to us supplier that we can get those, like you said, like the Moen fixtures and Max like tubs and things like that that will come direct you're right, like there is a difference between the big box stores and they can almost have the same product. It's just packaged differently and maybe not as quite the same as if you get them direct. So yeah, we have some local suppliers that we deal with directly on that. And as much as I said, we shop at the bigger stores occasionally. We're trying to create some of those better local connections, not only to get better products, but just also support the local guys better as well. And have those more better relationships with those local guys. And we can build that out and have the people that help us look for things we need. Because as we start to get into some specific projects over time, we run into things that is we need to like troubleshoot or find the right product. And the person at Home Depot is not going to help us do that. It's like we either don't have it or we don't. Some of the other suppliers will go out of their way to say, okay, you know what? We don't have that in stock, but I'll see if I can find a supplier for that, which has been nice over the years when we're trying to get into like a custom project of some sort.
Right. So give me some examples of the things that you would search out a premium supplier for. So you said cabinetry, you said tubs. What else?
Yeah, one product is funny because we have recently more focused on interior projects, but one, we're doing a screen and porch this year, which is something we've started to get out of. But it's a specific screening product for the screen and porch. This makes it much easier, and it actually makes it easier for the client to maintenance down the road. Something that we are having trouble, like none of this big box stores carry the product, and we found it through a local supplier that was able to source it through the United States, which was a bit of a problem with uh, extra tariffs and shipping and stuff these days with that going on. But we've managed to get it for a reasonable price, and so that was one specific thing that we're just in the last couple of weeks been dealing with. It's on its way at the moment, so that's a specific recent item. Trying to think if there's anything else specifically. I mean, we deal with a lot of kitchens is something we're getting into. We've gone through different cabinet suppliers and working with some of the local. We have actually in our small town at one point there was three custom kitchen people, which is odd for a town of like 4,000 people. And we've worked with all of them over the time. One of them just recently shut down or retired, but we worked with them quite a bit. We do like that because I mean they provide a higher end kitchen, so it does have to meet the right client to be able to fit their budget. But it's nice to work with them because we can then work with them to provide the client those extra finishes and higher quality for things that a client wants, and it makes a nicer product in the end, and something that's going to last for years to come versus something you might buy at the box store that we can make look nice, but the products might not last as long.
So what would be like an extra finish in a luxury bathroom build or kitchen build that wouldn't be in a normal build? Like, give me an example.
So something like we do a lot of bathrooms. We do a lot of bathrooms recently, and some of that is like the tile work. We do a lot of custom showers. And so going up beyond your, basic insert, doing showers that have not just a tile surround, but building in like niches and benches. Doing it instead of just doing maybe the standard trims on that, doing tile like edge returns, and putting those extra details into the work instead getting away from just the inserts. We still do a lot of just kind of the standard, tub inserts or a simple tile insert stall, but it's doing some of those extra details. There's some of the ones now that we're coming at. We're looking. We're always looking for clients that are willing to do some of these extra things. Like there's niches now that they can be put in with lighting as well. That's something that we have at our capability, but we're waiting for the right client to want like something like that in their space. Again,
Sorry, I
a
didn't
lot of it
catch
comes down
that.
to
To put it to
like a niche, like a niche shelf that has like lighting built into it, so that they have
lighting. Oh,
specific.
I missed the
Yeah.
lighting part. Light like you could put hold
So
on.
like
You can
in
put
the top of the
lighting
niche, it has like
in a
yeah,
shower?
yeah, exactly. Within the shelf of the where you'd store your soap and shampoos, that sort of thing. So it's
Oh,
products like that, and like
that's
we also do a lot of
crazy.
in-floor heat as well, which is really nice. Added bonus for a client to have that warm floor in the space. It's, a little bit extra finish compared to a standard bathroom.
Got it. So heated floors, what did you call it? Like the insert that goes
A
inside the
niche.
shower? Niche. Ah, okay. And then
Yeah.
the lighting, those are very cool. I was thinking, like, did some guy ask you for a TV? Do you put TVs in the shower? They
No.
never get out. They
Yeah,
never be out.
exactly. I mean, you could
The
definitely
poor wife
put
would
one in the bathroom. That wouldn't be too hard.
never see them again. All right. So, can you share a story from your first few months that still makes you laugh or cringe? And if not, totally fine.
Yeah, I got two kind of similar, maybe similar ones of, I mean, within my first few years. One was for client, kind of actually family friend. They had moved in, it was yeah, taken up, moved in with like the in-laws. The parents had owned this farmhouse for many years, like his whole life. The guy grew up in the house. His parents were getting older, and they did an addition to it. And they moved into the original part of the house, and the parents were now living in like a new addition on the back. So they're kind of sharing the space. They did all that separately. We came in after the fact to update the older part of the house that they're living in now, and part of that was to take down a big wall, open it up so their kitchen and dining room to be kind of one space. And at one point, we were kind of just getting started, and the wife kind of came in before she was leaving for the day and just said, "Oh, I forget the father's name, but he said." We haven't told the father that we're doing this. So if he comes in, just tell him you're doing a few modifications. I was like, well, within a couple hours, there's gonna be no wall here. It's gonna be pretty obvious what we're doing. She's like,
Oh
that's
my
fine. Just pretend we're just
gosh.
doing a few changes. I was like, we're not sure how you would feel about removing this wall in the house. I'm like,
Oh
well,
my god.
I can only tell him so much. Like eventually the wall's gonna be gone within a few hours. He's gonna notice that. She's like, that's fine. We'll deal with it when we get home.
My gosh.
It's lucky for us that the father never popped in at that point. He must have done it later on, but it was just like I can only once the wall's gone, it's the wall's gone. So it was
So
pretty funny that
stressful.
way. Yeah,
When I sold
we
home
had it.
improvements, we had to have all the homeowner like, all the people on the deed, like, sign the contract, so everybody knew everything, but
Yeah,
these
I
it
think they
sounds
were. I
crazy.
think they. I think they changed it so that he wasn't on the deed necessarily anymore, but it's just
Uh,
he still lived there. It's like they transferred all the property over to
uh,
the children, and then they did like all
oh,
this stuff. But again, because it was his home for like 60 years, they just he's not
right.
gonna love the changes all of a sudden. So, but
Boy.
that was
Oh boy.
just a funny thing. I had
That's
one other
awesome.
one where we were doing a deck for a client, and they were actually away, or going to like the plan was there we were going to be doing the work when they were away, and we were there and tore off the deck, and they had someone in the house sitting or checking up in the house, and they came in, and I guess they hadn't told them that we'd be there, and they showed up, and they were half tearing apart the deck, and they were kind of like, Wait, what are you guys doing?" And we're like, we explained what they're doing, like they never said anyone was going to be here, and
Oh my
we,
gosh.
it's one of those things that just they're shocked all of a sudden, showing up just to check on the house and somebody throwing half the deck apart. Again,
Oh
just
my gosh.
communication,
That's
which is a big thing for us now, but making sure the communication is relayed to all parties is important in any project. So
That's crazy. I think you just answered like 6 more of my questions all in one there, so that's awesome. Then that's super cringy though. I mean, we've all had those things that we learn from, but yeah, like
mhm.
it's crazy. That's very stressful. A little bit more than the average guy has to deal with. So, I
Yeah,
think
it's funny
you
stories.
answered perfectly, yeah, how to handle mistakes and unhappy customers, but in reputation, it's huge in renovations. So, like, everybody's gotten a one-star review, everyone's had those complaining people, like, what's your secret to getting happy customers to actually leave a review, and how do you handle it when a job doesn't go perfectly? Like, that's a huge challenge. There's always people that aren't. I feel like every HGTV show ends in someone having a hissy fit or a meltdown because the price increased or they uncovered something, you know? So how do you deal with
Yeah,
that when a
yeah.
job doesn't go perfectly, and how do you get reviews from people that aren't a one-star, "We hate you," even though they're not
Oh,
necessarily mad at you, they're mad at their house or something that like, my
yeah.
ex was a contractor, and he used to say, "I ripped apart this wall today," and, like, he thought I wasn't listening, but, there was plumbing, like, went right, 2 inches above the electrical outlet, and now I have to rip apart all their like,
Mhm.
stuff like that, and then it's not his fault, like, he just opened it up, and now he can't, by code, leave it that way because it's a fire hazard, right?
Yeah.
If that thing drips on the electrical box, the whole house can blow up, so kind of a problem. Anyway, so
Yeah.
what's your secret to getting happy customers to leave a review, and then how do you handle it when the job doesn't go as planned?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, communication is huge. It's something we pride ourselves on being good at and trying to even get better at communicating with the clients right from the beginning, and trying to put those expectations in place. We're still obviously, yes, like I said, improving on that as best we can. But we keep clients, throughout the process updated on what changes are happening. And like that, like you said, like a renovation is difficult because we can plan for a lot of stuff, but you can't see behind a lot of the walls. So like a lot of times you do get into, um, you start pulling things apart, opening up different sections of the home, and you do find issues. It happens often. We run into things like we'll start ripping up into flooring, and we find old asbestos flooring below, which now has got to be dealt with separately. We've run into that recently, so we're one for us, for the client is just trying to put that expectation like out there that we're going to keep them updated, but there may be things along the way that are outside of our scope of work, or we just can't foresee some of these, or we can warn you about them, but they've got to be dealt with as they come, sort of thing. So again, we kind of run into a lot of that, and we've been fortunate enough, knock on wood, that we've never had a terrible experience overall. We've had the odd client where we've had an issue with, or something does go wrong in a project, but again, like it's just kind of going to the client, addressing it head on, saying, addressing what the issue was, and then coming up with a solution for it. And trying to make, we always try to make the client as happy as we can. There are certain limitations sometimes of what we can do, um, but it's not shying away from it. I've heard so many stories of past people where they've had an issue and the client just stops in, or the contractor just stops answering their phone, or just disappears. And we're not like that. We make sure we back up our work, and take ownership if we have done something we've done does fail for some reason, or we mess up somehow, taking ownership of it and fixing it. We have had to take a shower before because it did end up leaking, and it was from the installation. It was just not put in properly, and what we had to do is, at our own expense, we had to go back and take it all out and reinstall a new one. So we weren't, I wasn't super happy about that, but it was learning process for us in our team. We would put in certain guidelines now to make sure like that doesn't happen again. That one specifically was just not put in level and it was not draining properly. So we now put in guidelines to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. So again, costly expense, but we backed up our work and made it right. And then we learned from it as a company. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we managed that thing. You just talk about Google reviews. I mean, we've been fortunate to only have 5-star reviews, which is great. We haven't had to deal with a 1-star review. I'm hoping that we keep that up, but I know at some point it'll happen. With, as you get more and more, it's just kind of nature of the beast. It will happen at some point. So, again, then at that point, we'll just address it head on with that client. And I'm hoping that again, we don't leave a project at that point that the client won't leave that or would leave that 1-star review. Maybe they give us a 3 or 4 because we didn't fully meet their needs, but we were able to rectify it in a way that, made them get beyond that problem.
That's awesome. I actually just met a guy in the gym who was like, "I just got married." And I was like, "Okay, what's the secret to a long, happy marriage?" He's like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Well, if you did know, because I don't let my kids get away with that either, like, if you did know, what?" And he's like, "She's always right?" I'm like, "Well, that'll set you up for failure." He was really trying to figure it out, though. It was super cute. It was like, "She comes first?" I'm like, "Okay, I mean, you're on the right track. You're thinking about it seriously, but, like, what if she's always right, that makes you always wrong, and then your survival brain won't deal with that.
Hmm.
Your reptilian brain back there will say, no, I'm first. She's not. He's like, but over my friends, over my friends. I'm like, okay. In any case, the point is exactly what you said before is communication. Now, I would argue some people have communication, but it's not very effective.
Hmm.
When my sons were teenagers, they were screaming in my face. I mean, it happens. And we were communicating, but not effectively. So I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
true.
the secret is, adding that effective communication with managing expectations. And it sounds like you guys have got
Mhm.
that figured out. So that is unbelievably awesome. And I think it applies to anyone listening to any relationship that you have with your clients, your kids, your partner, yourself. I think that's really, really, really wise. I think you answered again like 4 or 5 of my questions. So, and you answered the yo-yo effect about not having too much work one month and not the next. So you started running meta
Mhm.
ads, which we highly recommend, but a lot of guys don't want to jump into that.
Yeah, it's a
So
jump. It's
so
a
what
jumping
is
one of those.
what's your yeah, what's the so usually we talk to guys about the yo-yo effect a lot. So what's your biggest struggle in the business right now? Like what are you playing catch up on?
I mean, over the last couple of years, it was. I'm sorry, it was that yo-yo effect of trying to be consistent throughout the year. We still have. I mean, the nature of construction is always going to be up and down, but I'm learning over this last year better how to plan for that. I mean, the lead, we're getting more leads in consistently as helped that, and it's starting to even this year is starting to look early in the year that it's going to be a good year that way. But I'm starting to learn that planning for the downtime as well. So just because we have a good month, not going out and spending all the money because it was a great July was we did a huge amount of money and now we got all this extra. I got to learn to saving that for the slower months to still cover our expenses and overhead and allow that flexibility. So again, some of this we're still kind of figuring it out as we're growing as ourselves. But yeah, it's recognizing as well, like I do have a knowledge of like I know, January and February are consistently our lower months and kind of planning for that. And also now in September, October, I'm already thinking about that. How can we start booking for January, February so that we're not dead in those months? And like that has worked out well because we've just had the best January, February in all the 7 years we've been in business. So
Do
it's great.
tell, do tell. How
Yeah.
did you do that? All the guys listening want to know.
Well, I mean, a
If you
lot of
had
it
the
was
best
just again like it was just
yeah.
getting those, like, the leads, like, we brought in those the meta leads, meta ads in August, I think is when we started them, and that really started to fill our funnel with work pretty quickly, a bit faster than, like, just the word of mouth, and so from that, we got so many leads, we were able to really kinda, like, fill in the work, and we also adjusted our pricing slightly with some clients that if they're willing to do that work in the wintertime, we could give them a little bit better rate. They were willing to wait instead of doing it when we were busier. So that was something we tried out and seemed to work as well. But again, we got to be cautious of not not discounting ourselves and that sort of way, but also, if we can fill a time where we're slow and keep everyone working and keep overhead covered, then that's better than, trying to make way more profit, but not having enough jobs. So that's kind of what we've done. That's just the last year. It's the first year we've kind of done that, and we're getting better at that. But we'll keep growing from that over the next many years, right?
So what I heard, and I'm just trying to clarify for the guys watching, like if they're new and they're starting up, they don't necessarily know what you know, which is obviously why we're doing this. So there's you said something about there being a difference between having more profit in a job and doing more jobs. And I don't think that I don't want to say beginners, but guys early on, first few years don't really understand what you mean when you say that. So is that you said you don't want to discount as well. There was a whole lot of nuance in what you just said. So I just want to
Fair enough.
clarify. That does a lot, like, for the people who know marketing and know business and, have had business for decades and whatever, like, that's a given. But for people who are a few years in, they don't have a clue what you actually mean when you say that. So let's try to break that down just a little bit because you just dropped a whole bunch of gold, and I don't want it to just be, to just fly by. So one, you talked about early on, you had difficulty pricing, and that is
Mhm.
probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, more to do with figuring out your material cost, figuring out all the things you gotta buy, right? And then figuring out your labor cost. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's even more so like accounting for the overhead and all the pay, making sure that I can take home pay at the end of the year as well, right? So when you first start out, you're like, oh yeah, just put on 10% and it'll be enough. And well, like you're forgetting that, especially as a company grows, with just one guy and your truck and some tools, you don't have a lot of overhead. But as you get bigger and you get employees and you get, a shop space or something you're renting, all of a sudden the overhead it's a big part of your how you operate. And so just saying, oh, I'm just going to tack on 10 or 20 or percent on top of something, that might be good, but if you don't know your numbers, then it won't be good. Because it's like, yeah, look, yeah, like if I'm buying this material for $1,000 and putting on 20%, I'm gonna get $200 on that material. Sounds good off the start, but like if you got to think about, yeah, everything else you have to cover at the end of the month. If you're not following that, then you're going to be short every month, and that's what kind of ended up with me as we started to grow beyond just myself. Um, that we eventually kind of, even though I was raising my prices a little bit, I just kind of got to a point where I was not making any money at the end of the year because I wasn't accounting for all of that extra stuff. And it's like, yeah, like every job I thought I was making money. My labor was 5,000, materials were 5,000, and I took home 15. Well, I should be making $5,000 in that job. But really, once you put in all the extra stuff and a few of the, even a few of the setbacks on the job or scheduling changes or guys, and labor issues, all of a sudden that job cost me $15,000 and I made nothing. Without taking into all the accounts. So, getting clear on though your numbers has been big for me and something I'm still trying to improve daily. But we've significantly got better at knowing our numbers and pricing and then increasing our prices to reflect that.
So you talked I love all of that, by the way, and I think my ex and I used to go 15 rounds on this when he first started because that was the thing he didn't know how to do, was like estimate. And
Mm.
it was rough on the relationship. We had little kids and, just being flat out honest. I mean, it was really tough to watch him work so hard and not bring anything home. And we're like, what the hell? It was hard to watch from the outside, and just
Mhm.
knowing how much effort he put in, and the before and afters were beautiful, but, like, there's nothing to show for it at the end of the month, super disheartening that did all his beautiful work, and he was also the one, I think that, initially if he uncovered something, like, okay, so he did a laundry room renovation, and the previous guys, like, vented it into the ceiling, and then he pulled it apart to properly vent it, and there's mold. And then, like, now he's gotta clean all that out and do, some
Mhm.
maybe some abatement, whatever, and he didn't charge the homeowner for the extra what he uncovered because he felt bad. And I was like,
Yeah.
"But you're taking that from us, like, you're taking that from your kids' mouths." Like, we had to have these really deep, hard, horrible conversations. And it
Right.
was all related to just what you talked about, but it was so much deeper than that. You're talking about pricing like it's no big deal, right? You're just like, "Oh, yeah, well, pricing's hard." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. Pricing is super important. It's crazy. It can
Really.
really mess up your whole business." So just going
Yeah.
back to one other thing that you said, the balance between profit, AKA in my way of thinking, and correct me if this is what you meant, in terms of having more profit in a job, but having less jobs versus having more jobs and less profit. Like, I think you were trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to figure out a balance between either charging more per job or having more jobs and charging less. Is that
Yeah, that's
what you
part
said?
part of what I was saying in there, and that's something like I through my business coaching that they kind of highlighted as well is that it's better to for us to make a bit more profit and do less job because you can, as a company, as a business, you can make the same amount of money and do less work, sort of thing, and less work is less overhead and less complications, and that's kind of allows the company to build is again pricing those jobs profitably and correctly it allow you to grow better. So like, yeah, like having thin margins on a job means I've got to do 10 times more jobs to kind of make the same amount if we just priced a little bit better and had more margins on those jobs. So that's kind of
Yeah.
important. I think part of what it was kind of saying as well was knowing our numbers and being able to in the slow months, maybe we make a little bit less profit knowing that, January, February, historically, we haven't had a lot of jobs. It's kind of slow and that hurts our overhead because we still got overhead expenses and we're trying to keep employees employed. It kind of hurts when we don't have a lot of work. So for us in those slow months, it is a little bit better to lower the price a little bit. We take a little bit less profit, but we are covering overhead. We are able to get those jobs so we can cover overhead. We can keep our guys employed. And yeah, maybe in January, February, our profit's not quite as big, but it keeps things moving and covering. But and then we can, throughout the rest of the year, we can adjust that properly. So there's a couple different things I meant there, but hopefully that kind of explained what I was talking about.
That was awesome. I can't wait to hear it. If you guys are watching this on whatever platform, I mean, YouTube, you can comment below, but I'd love to hear what you guys thought of that. I thought that was just some gold that you dropped there. So just, stepping away from the price conversation, I think that I just made it super heavy with my story there. I didn't mean to, but
No worries. You're right
what
about
makes
the
your
change orders with the you're talking about like change orders is again sort of take it off, but like doing the extra work is something I did for years. Like you said, you'd open up a wall or do something, and the client would add on, "Oh, do you mind just putting on these couple things?" Like, yeah, that's fine. And it's like, "Well, do you mind doing this?" And before you know it, you've done like a couple $1,000s worth of more work, and you haven't priced for it. So that's another thing that we're very stringent on. And with my guys, as I said, I'm not in the field as much anymore, but my guys know that if a client comes to them saying, "Oh, can you just do this?" They need to let me know, and we'll have a conversation. Sometimes it's like, "Can you just hang the mirror?" Yeah, I mean, go ahead, just hang the mirror. That's not a problem. But if they're asking you to do that 10,000 times, then we got to add that. Or if they're trying to add on painting another door or more room, well, now that's a change order. It's outside the scope of what we quoted. And, those little things can bleed money like crazy out of the company if they're not being accounted for. So.
Yeah, honestly, I think, like, my ex, he does amazing work. He is a premier, like, amazing contractor. I think that he should mark himself as the tidy contractor because I don't think anybody does that. Everyone expects renovations to be a mess, and every
Mm,
person that he's ever done work for says he leaves a job site immaculate, which is not a thing. Contractors are messy. So I was like, you could totally make a whole brand out of the tidy contractor, and
yeah,
that would spread
that's
far
our
and wide. Like,
that's
I
our
I would
slogan
be
here.
like, no way. So that was my next question, is what makes your business, that was my segue into what makes your business different from others in the area.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what like we also try like so our thing here we said in the back is clean renovations, clear communication that we do with our clients. And so we talked about the communication already, but clean renovations is something that we also market on, and we do well. Again, we're always improving on that, but having a clean renovation for a client that we're not just tearing at everything and leaving a mess for the client. I mean, renovation is messy. There's no getting around it, but it's the way that we daily will clean up a job site. We organize things. We make it safe I mean, our contracts, our clients aren't supposed to go through the renovation area, but we all know that when we leave, they're going to poke their head in there and have a look what's going on. And so we want to make sure when they're doing that, one, it looks good, but two, it's also safe for them to do that, even though they're technically not supposed to be there without us. Again, we want to make sure that that's safe and not leaving a mess in their house. And we're putting down protections in the travel areas. We put up, like containment areas around our work, so we're mitigating as much dust as we can. And we try to be upfront again with our clients about that. Like, yes, renovations, demolition, it's going to be messy, dirty, but we're going to do our best to contain that, clean that throughout the process. And then when we're all done, we do a full cleanup as well to get rid of everything before we hand it back to the client.
Awesome. Awesome. I love all of that. I think we've covered like another four more of our questions. So I'll just end off. I know we've been on here for a while now, but I've been enjoying talking to you and hearing your stories and hearing everything that you're up
Oh,
to.
thank you.
So we'll end up on what's your favorite thing about serving people locally? That'll be our last question for today.
Yeah, I that's a great question, and I think it's just kind of being able to take someone's space and provide them updating their space and providing them with a new home that their family can now grow and live within. Um, that's kind of like that's what we do in the renovation space, right? Is try to make a client space be comfortable, and that's where I really enjoy doing. Being able to walk in the way at the end of the day when we're done a job, we know we've done it well, and we've allowed that client to and their family to be able to enjoy that new home for hopefully decades to come, making it function better for them or be safer for them, healthier for them. There's many aspects to that. Again, being able to help, um,
Love it.
yeah, people in our community, our neighbors, and everything, just to be able to do that.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, I appreciate you being on and being real about money and managing expectations and communication. I mean, really just managing the pipeline sounds like is the biggest struggle for guys in the home remodel space. Nobody wants
Mhm.
someone trouncing in the winter and messing up their place. So it's always seems to be the down season in the winter. So thanks for
Yeah,
sharing all your stories and I love how you deal with happiness management with your customers, and it's easy to pretend that everything's perfect, but the guys listening to this need to hear the truth about the business side too. So,
mhm.
where can people find you if they want to see your work, John?
Yeah, I guess the best would be, we have our website, breelanconstruction.com. For any of our clients, that's where our first point of contact is usually getting them through our website. And so any client that way can go through there to get quote. But we also have past work and projects and details on our website. And then we're on social media like Instagram and Facebook at Breelan Construction. And so you can find us there.
Awesome. Awesome. And just so you know, he said that real fast, but there's a lot of links in the descriptions wherever you're watching this on
Yeah.
Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. The links will be in the description below. And if you would like to be a guest on our podcast, email us at therenoring@gmail.com. That's therenoring@gmail.com. You can get in the ring. It's not Fight Club. It's okay. And that's it for today. We will see you on the next episode of the Reno Ring. And thanks for listening. We are honored to have shared this time with you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.